Hello, my name is Kai, and I am a bit of a rambler. I like to travel, learn, and tell stories. So, my story of how I started traveling started with China. I did very well, went to a couple schools. But when I tell people about living in China and how easy it was, how cheap it was, of course, how good the food was, how many things there were to see and new experiences, and how much money I saved, I always get the question, well, then why did you leave? If you liked that life so much better than living in the States, for example, then why would you leave China if that's such a great deal? And that's a good question, but it definitely belies a mindset that I no longer had. I'm not trying to attain a certain position. I'm not trying to get somewhere. I want enough to do what I like to do, which is travel, learn, and tell stories, and I can do that now. So, waiting in a country I don't want to be anymore just so I can get an extra $20,000 or whatever has no bearing on my decision-making process. I can't reach the point where I don't have to work to travel, learn, and tell stories again. I can't reach that level more. So once I realized that it was time to move on, I accepted that and I moved on. I often hear from friends or people that, oh, well, if I can just get this job, or if I can just get this much money, or if I can just get to the point where I'm my own boss, I'll be happy then. And I knew that I didn't have to get into the grind set or whatever you call it so much, as I had to perceive opportunities and attempt every opportunity until I found one that worked. And I know I didn't have to kill myself slaving away at some job that I didn't like for the profit of someone else, because eventually something good might happen. Because to get the job that was way better than the job I had in the United States, I didn't have to do anything except keep my eyes open for opportunities. And I didn't choose one opportunity. It was like, that's the correct one. I tried tons of things. And then one of the opportunities turned out to give me what I wanted. Less hours, more money, the ability to travel at will, low cost of living, and learning new things all around me all the time. A constantly fascinating culture that I wouldn't get bored of, and didn't have all the boring or depressing answers to already. I didn't have to get into the grind set or whatever you call it so much, as I had to perceive opportunities and attempt every opportunity until I found one that worked. It wasn't about working so hard until you get this thing. It was about seeing an opportunity and attempting to partake of that opportunity. That's what worked. Not keeping my nose to the grindstone, but doing what felt right to me. I was looking for a video game controller, a Nintendo 64 controller, on Portland Craigslist, and someone mistakenly put a job ad for a teaching job on that for sale section of Craigslist. That's how I got my basically dream job. I'd always been interested in traveling. I felt very comfortable learning a new language. I liked the idea of teaching in a new country, since it was a new profession I hadn't tried before. And I definitely wanted to make more money than I found out my manager made, a soul-crushing and shockingly low amount of money for someone running an entire franchise, especially relative to the cost of living in the US. Here was a possible opportunity right between, the Atomic Purple N64 controller and Donkey Kong 64. I answered an obviously incorrectly placed ad, and it was connected to a real school, and I went to China and started teaching a few weeks later. Like, it all happened because I took that opportunity, because I looked around at the life I was living in the States. I knew that life was wrong for me. I knew that. And so I tried a lot of different things, and then trying this in China worked out. So there we go. I had my dream job and my dream position. I had my own schools. I was making money, and I had all the free time I wanted. My business was doing great. I had good friends, and I was just saving more and more money. So then why did you leave such a good situation? Because those weren't my only goals. I wasn't accruing business prestige or savings for the sake of accrual. I didn't want more just to have more. I knew exactly how much I needed that I could invest and live off the dividends, because I knew how much it cost to live in other countries, well less than $1,000 a month. And at points when I was backpacking, I was living on $200 a month. Maybe $220, we'll say some of the months, but some of the months I was living on $170. So I knew that just with the under $1,000 that I was getting from my investment dividends per month, that covered indefinitely traveling. And if I needed more money, I could go back and teach English again. I'm certified for life. I now have years of experience. The most anybody requires is 2 years of English from a teacher. Even the university programs that are looking for adult English teachers for the most prestigious jobs, 2 years maximum. So if I ever needed to go back for whatever reason, I could go back and get back into that life again if I needed to save money or take a break from not working and traveling all the time. So if I needed money, I could go back. It wasn't like I was leaving behind that life permanently and I had to choose one or the other. Also, I had saved enough money to pay for traveling indefinitely. And the argument there that people usually give me is, well, but if you waited, you could live in more luxury. And I can't really imagine it worth it trading another year of my life for, I don't know, having an extra set of clothes, an extra meal instead of the meal I already had. I don't need any extra things. I have everything I needed. I could pay for any food I wanted. I could travel to any country I wanted to travel to. I can. I can pay for any extravagance I want, because my extravagances are all practical. They give me enjoyment. I can't buy a seat on a private jet, but I would not want that. I would not want a bus gilded in gold on the outside of the bus. It's a bus. It gets me from one place to the other. Wow, those leather seats are so much. I don't care. It's 2 hours. And the point of me traveling is to go to the other place and start learning new things, go to a new environment and world. And again, to save that extra $20,000, I would have to wait an extra 5 months or so. And then those 5 months would be gone, and I would be doing a routine for accrual, simply to gain more capital that I did not need. And who's to say I get 5 months after that? I don't know how many more months I have, how many more days I have. So once I had what I needed, there was no incentive, there was no financial incentive to stay in that position any longer, because that financial incentive was weighed against my actual single life that I have and how I want to spend that life. Now, my investments, it's been, a decade that they've been going on since I decided to leave, and they've only gone up how much I get per month, because I never use up my full $1,000 as it started back then each month. So I get a little bit more each month. And yeah, I have enough to buy tickets to wherever I want to go. I have enough experience that everything's as cheap as it could possibly be for a traveler. I like to cook anyway, so I don't even spend that much money. But even if I spend money buying food at restaurants every day, it's just not that expensive in other countries, and there's no such thing as tipping, the stupidest practice in American culture. So I don't need more money. That's it. I had saved enough money, and I was happy where I was because I couldn't think of anything I would want that I couldn't pay with the amount of money I already am making every month passively. I had accumulated a ton of experiences. I didn't feel like I was going to be missing out on something. I had sort of claimed China as like, this is my second life. I'm starting over. I'm doing this for real. And then I did it. I fell in love with someone. It was a great relationship. It ended because it was supposed to. And more specifically, probably because I was not mature enough for that relationship yet. I climbed like 50 mountains, literally, and some of them were absolutely breathtaking. You should listen to the episode I'm going to do about Taishan. That mountain climb had a specific memory that is still unbelievable to me to this day. But I went to dance clubs. I actually won a dance competition impromptu while I was drunk, and maybe I got the benefit of being a foreigner. But I won. With the worm, I'd gotten drunk and jumped a lot of fences. I went to very fancy parties and I drank $1,000 Baijiu, which is still disgusting. So there didn't feel like I was leaving untaken opportunities behind when I decided to go. I was like, yeah, no, I did pretty much everything that I had the opportunity to do. I really tried to seize the day as well as I could. So I wasn't yearning for much anymore. And I knew that if I left and went to a new country where I had to start all over again and learn a new language and start traveling again, like I didn't have my comfortable apartment and my ridiculous gaming laptop and all this stuff, that I'd just have to start living again, basically, instead of existing inside a comfortable routine I had made for myself. And that was very exciting to contemplate, and then it was just as exciting and much more satisfying and gratifying to live once I made the decision to leave. But you know what didn't keep me there? Another shove in the right direction, I would say. All the people who decided not to leave. I had been there 8 years, something like that. And every person I knew there, I had met in the first year, we were all close friends. Everybody left one by one. And most people just don't like to travel that long. But the longer the people who did stay lived in China, the more ungrateful they got for the fantastic opportunity and immense privileges they had. They were getting paid to speak their native language, and everyone thought they were an interesting novelty because they were foreign, but still had conversations with them and engaged with them regularly. Some of these people I knew had been there for 3 times as long as I have, over 20 years, and hadn't learned Mandarin Chinese, living in Beijing. That's unbelievable. Because you're not participating in the country at all if you don't at least try to learn and try to communicate with a few of the people around you at some point. And then that same person would complain that he was lonely or Chinese people were this or that. And it's like, you can't even talk to them, dude. You have no idea what they're like, regardless of how long you've lived here. Spoiled complainers was the problem with the people I knew, the other foreigners who were living the life in China, getting the salaries of white-collar businessmen for less than a quarter of the amount of work. I mean, just by hours. And the actual quality of work was like, you speak a language for 45 minutes and then the class is over and you get paid a couple $100, like it's crazy. And I was so worried that if I kept staying there, even though I felt like I was pretty appreciative, I didn't take for granted all the privileges I enjoyed teaching English in a foreign country. I was worried that if I stayed too long, that my personality too would turn brittle or spoil in the sun. These people were complaining about how China was so difficult to live in, how it was gross that Chinese people weren't polite, or it was so irritating that they blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you're so lucky to be here. You were a bum in certain cases in the United States, like a literal bum, like basically not quite on the streets, but just about there and barely surviving. And now there's great food everywhere. People think you're interesting just because you're from a different country. They're paying you a ridiculous amount of money for speaking your native language, more money than any of them could spend per month. And they are complaining repeatedly and consistently about the texture of the watercolors that are painting your privileged life. The longer I stayed in China, after 5 years, I was like, oh, everyone is complaining about Chinese people and Chinese culture and the things they don't like and the very circumstances and context that provide these English teachers with the very comfortable life and compensation they are enjoying. I could feel that getting to me, even though I'm a fairly optimistic person and I tend to appreciate the situation I'm in. When my entire circle of friends had now devolved into complaining about the situation that had given them their extraordinary privilege, I could feel it infecting my perspective. And it still took a few more years because I was still very appreciative of China and I still liked what I was doing. And I started my own school, of course, so that was a new experience. But while that was going on, I still had to listen every time I hung out with someone, the 3 remaining friends now, or 2 remaining friends, I don't know. It wasn't many people left by the last year. You know what, actually, there was like 5 regular people to hang out with, but all they did was complain about China. And I could feel it infecting my heart and making me think uncharitable thoughts. And I was like, well, I don't want to be around these people anymore. And as long as I'm making a break from all of the people I know in China, maybe it's time to make a clean break altogether and start the next part of my life, which was the right decision. I had a bunch of other small signals. One of them was Xi Jinping decided to abolish term limits for the president. So the year before I left, and I left just a few months after he abolished the Chinese constitutional term limits, Xi declared himself president for life of China. And that's why he's been president for the last 13 years. Because he was like, well, I'm president now forever, so the Constitution will just change that. And they did, and that's what China's living with right now. So that when I heard about that after I had bought my ticket to leave, I bought it like a couple months out, and then the next week, Xi announced his his order taken overnight to change the Chinese Constitution so that he became president for life. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a red flag for this place. I guess it's good I'm bouncing out. And then my landlady had decided to raise my rent, which is almost insignificant. It went from like $150 US per month to $190 per month, and I'm making whatever. I'm making thousands of dollars more per month. It just didn't matter, but it was just another flag that she was unwilling to bend on, which was a problem because she rented me a literal empty concrete square. I put in tile and electricity and all this stuff. And then she said, well, it's so much nicer now that I have to charge you more for it. And I was like, oh, I made it nice. Can you do that after I leave? She's like, no, it's so nice that you should pay more. And I was like, well, she sucks, so I don't need that. There were a lot of things like that happening, and I wanted to travel more anyway. I traveled frequently. I flew to other countries for short trips, but I wanted to live in other places. I thought about teaching. I was like, do you still like teaching? Yes, I still love teaching. I love all my students. It's great. It's great work, and I do feel like I'm helping them. But there might be something else I love, and I haven't tried other things yet. And I don't like being told that I have to follow a schedule and all that kind of stuff. Whatever, I had been doing that schedule, even though it was my own school and I mostly set everything. I still was just like, well, this is a huge obligation that I have to keep running because everybody likes the school. And I was the only employee aside from one other Chinese employee, so it wasn't like I was going to fire 20 people or whatever. And a couple of teachers I knew ended up absorbing all of my students the week after I left, so it wasn't like I was leaving anybody in the lurch. And while I did like teaching and I loved my students, it was tiring. I was still teaching basic English in most of the classes. I had a couple grown-up classes and prep classes, like high school level math and writing. I can't even remember. High school classes, whatever. But I was definitely in a routine, and I knew that the last time I broke a cultural routine, it turned out great. So I should probably try that again, which when I really bore down and just let the future possibilities wash over me, I had a feeling it was time. And that's what I told the parents when they asked me, and a lot of people, and it was kind of a cop-out because I didn't want to tell the parents that they were irritating, and I didn't want to be like, oh, I have enough money, so I'm going to go now, bye, to all of my coworkers who were still substituting and didn't save any money and just wasted money constantly. But I did truly have a feeling like it was time. So even though it was something I said, it was very true, just like the feeling I had when I left the States the first time. When I got that weird job offer from a drunk principal in China, I was like, oh, you know what? This is the time to make a change. This is a pivotal moment in my life. And I know I don't want what I have right now in the States. So whatever is going to happen in China, it won't be this thing I know I don't want. And I did have the same feeling. I was like, whatever is going on now, it's not going to get me where I want. And I was in a much better situation. I own my own business, making plenty of money. I had friends. I was dating regularly. I was still exploring new places and learning new things all the time. But that path didn't feel like it was going to get me where I wanted to be anymore. And so I took the leap and I left this much better situation for something else. And it worked because what I wanted was to do what I wanted. I didn't want the obligation of showing up afternoons, Wednesday and Friday, like working 3 days a week or whatever. I didn't want that obligation. I want to clear my mind entirely so that I could just do what I wanted, which is traveling, meeting new people, learning new things, writing, making a podcast, drawing funny pictures, like things I like to do, read books, watch movies, like hang out, eat new foods, cook new foods, build stuff. I want to be able to do all of that at my pace. And I don't need $1,000 per day to do that. I don't need some cherry award ceremony at the end of a career to tell me I'm allowed to enjoy my life. By the math and my trips at that point, I knew that I could travel indefinitely. And I was like, well, what if I don't have enough money and all that? And I did worry about that stuff. Then I was like, oh, that's all bullshit. None of that is real. None of that's real. None of those are real concerns because you don't have them yet. You're imagining false concerns that could come up in the future. But by the math, by your experience, you know this will work. So go do it. And if it doesn't, it's fine. You can go do something else. You can come back here and, if you need to tweak the plan. But if you can just skip this way to living exactly how you want to live in the exact same way, I skipped 50 years of a factory job, or actually, honestly, I skipped 50 years as a store manager in the United States and skipped right to the end of the line, where I instantly had more disposable income than anyone I knew. in my life. And I was having more fun spending it and making new experiences than anyone I knew in my life. I was working less than anyone I knew in my life who had a whatever job back in the States. Like, I just skipped all of it, and I suddenly had my dream job, my own business. And so I was like, maybe you can just skip the line again and go straight from having, your dream job to no job at all and still have money coming in and just do whatever you wanted. And it worked. Yeah, I mean, it did. But I had the same feeling when I left the States. It's time. I should take this opportunity. I should attempt this. And I had the same feeling when I was leaving China because I perfectly understood all of the benefits and circumstances I was leaving behind. I knew the entire situation. And I thought, this is another opportunity. Maybe I'm just going to skip the line and start traveling forever and whatever. Just do what I want. Maybe you are already retired and you don't have to wait to be retired anymore. Turned out, at 33 or whatever it was, I was and am. Also, it was really irritating? I am a runner, and the pollution hadn't gotten any better for the decade I was in China. I don't care what the AQI says, the air quality index. I don't care what the officials say. I don't care what the officials from other countries say. The air was still gross when I left China in 2019 or whatever it was. It was as gross as when I got to China in 2012. Not everywhere. One of the clearest skies I've ever seen was in Yanqing, this place outside of Beijing. But in the cities, the pollution was still gross, and that was kind of irritating. About that time, a couple years before I left, I had heard about the Uyghurs because I knew Uyghurs from Xinjiang, and they were telling me things that she was doing that was kind of hurting their culture. And I knew friends who went back to Xinjiang, and then I didn't hear from them again. Yeah, so I mean, as far as red flags go, that was a big one as well. And then after I left, that's when the Western media, like a year maybe after I left, 2020 or so, that's when the rest of the world started hearing about the Uyghurs and the concentration camps and all that kind of stuff. So I knew that was happening, and then I found out about the concentration camps through mass media, though I had heard rumors from my Uyghur friends, my Xinjiang friends. And it was just the right time to leave. In the same way that leaving both terms that Trump was elected to the U.S. presidency was a great idea. It's 2025 now, and women are dying in parking lots, and child rape victims are being forced to give birth. You can choose not to pay into that conservative system that harms children and other vulnerable groups. So, guys, you can vote with your feet. And I vote with my feet. I live abroad. I don't pay taxes to administrations I don't agree with. And I'm learning things every day and having great experiences all the time. And I have the opportunity and free time to pursue activities like this podcast and other creative pursuits that I'm interested in. Now, to get to this point, I did have to take the opportunity presented to me to go teach English abroad. I'm looking at a job board right now. There's a teacher wanted in the Maldives. Whoa, or what's that, $3,500 per month in Beijing right now. A maximum of 10 students per class, just basic kindergarten English. Hello. So these jobs are paying more than they got me there for sure. Go get your feet under you and then do what you want after you save up what you want. Or do that the rest of your life. I don't know. Do what you want. Enjoy it. Have fun. This is the life you have. This is the life you're living. Live it how you want to live it.